On the morning of March 27, 1992, the quiet town of Kottayam, Kerala, was shaken by a grim discovery at St. Pius X Convent, a respected Catholic institution, nestled in the heart of a devout Syro-Malabar community. Sister Abhaya, a 21-year-old nun in training, was found dead in the convent's well, her body submerged in the cold, dark water. Abhaya, born Beena Thomas, was a bright and dedicated young woman from a modest family, drawn to a life of service within the church. Her sudden death sent ripples of shock through the convent, her family, and the tightly knit community, raising questions that would haunt Kerala for decades. The convent's nuns, alerted by Abhaya's absence at morning prayers, initially assumed she had overslept or fallen ill. When a search led to the well, the sight of her lifeless body sparked panic and grief. The local police were called, and the scene was cordoned off. Officers noted the well's depth, about 20 feet, and the absence of any obvious signs of struggle near its edge. Abhaya's slippers and veil, however, were found scattered in the kitchen, alongside a spilled water bottle and an open fridge door, suggesting a disturbance. These details, though recorded, were quickly overshadowed by the police's initial theory: suicide. Within days, the Kottayam police, backed by the Kerala Crime Branch, concluded that Abhaya, possibly suffering from psychological distress, had taken her own life. The autopsy report, citing drowning as the cause of death, seemed to support this, though it failed to explain the head injuries later deemed critical. Abhaya's family, devastated and skeptical, rejected the suicide narrative. Beena, they insisted, was a cheerful, devout young woman with no history of mental illness. Her parents questioned why a nun would be in the kitchen at an odd hour, around 4 a.m., as estimated by the time of death, and why the convent's leadership seemed so quick to accept the police's verdict. The community, too, began to murmur. Kottayam, a hub of Catholic influence, was no stranger to the church's sway over local affairs, and whispers of a cover-up grew louder. Why were the kitchen's oddities, a spilled bottle, a slipper, dismissed so readily? Could someone have tampered with the scene before police arrived? The investigation faced immediate hurdles. The convent's nuns, bound by loyalty and hierarchy, were reluctant to speak freely, offering vague or contradictory accounts. Some claimed Abhaya was troubled, while others described her as content. The police, under pressure to close the case, appeared uninterested in probing deeper. Key evidence, like the kitchen items, was not properly preserved, and the well's surroundings were contaminated by curious onlookers. Worse, allegations surfaced that the initial autopsy was rushed, with claims of interference by influential figures tied to the church. By mid-1992, the case seemed destined to fade into obscurity. Another tragic but resolved incident. Enter Joman Puthan Purakal, a young human rights activist with a dogged resolve. Outraged by the apparent whitewash, he formed the Sister Abhaya Case Action Council, rallying students, locals, and even 67 nuns who signed a petition demanding a proper investigation. Joman's protests outside police stations and churches drew media attention, turning a local tragedy into a statewide cause. His questions were sharp. Why was the suicide theory pushed so forcefully? Who stood to gain from silencing the truth? The public, fueled by his activism, began to see Abhaya's death as a symbol of institutional failure. In 1993, bowing to mounting pressure, the Kerala government handed the case to the Central Bureau of Investigation, CBI, India's premier investigative agency. The CBI's arrival brought hope, but early efforts were stymied. Witnesses turned hostile, retracting statements under pressure. Forensic samples from the scene had degraded, and the convent's records offered little clarity. By 1994, the CBI's first report leaned toward suicide, citing insufficient evidence of foul play. This sparked outrage, with Joman and the Action Council accusing the agency of buckling under external influence. A second CBI team took over, and in 1995, a breakthrough emerged. Forensic experts re-examining Abhaya's autopsy confirmed her head injuries were inconsistent with suicide. Her death was now officially a homicide. Yet, With no clear suspects, the case remained a puzzle, mired in delays and distrust. The rising tension in Kottayam was palpable. Abhaya's family clung to faith in justice, while the church faced growing scrutiny. The community grappled with a question that lingered. Like a shadow, if Abhaya was murdered, who could have done it? And why was the truth so hard to uncover? The night of March 27, 1992, at St. Pius X Convent in Kottayam, Kerala, remains shrouded in mystery. But the CBI's investigation, bolstered by years of persistence, pieced together a chilling account of what likely happened to Sister Abhaya. Around 4 a.m., the 21-year-old nun, known for her quiet devotion, was in the convent's kitchen, possibly fetching water or investigating a noise. The prosecution's theory, built on circumstantial evidence and witness testimony, alleges that Abhaya stumbled upon a compromising scene involving two priests, Father Thomas Kotur and Father Jose Puthrikail, and a nun, Sister Sephi. To silence her, the trio allegedly attacked her, striking her head with a blunt object, later identified as an axe handle, and dumped her body in the convent's well to stage a suicide. The crime scene painted a disjointed picture. Abhaya's body was found in the well, her head bearing wounds that forensic experts later confirmed were caused by blunt force, trauma before drowning. In the kitchen, investigators noted a spilled water bottle, an open fridge door, and Abhaya's slipper and veil scattered on the floor, suggesting a struggle. These details, initially overlooked by local police, became critical to the CBI's homicide ruling in 1995. The kitchen's disarray raised questions. Why was Abhaya there at such an odd hour? What could have provoked a violent confrontation in a sacred space? The identities of the suspects emerged slowly, as the CBI faced a wall of silence from the convent and church authorities. Father Thomas Kotur, a senior priest and administrator, and Sister Sephi, a nun at the convent, were central figures. Father Jose Puthrikail, another priest, was also implicated but later discharged. The breakthrough came in 2007 with the testimony of Adaka Raju, a local thief who claimed he was near the convent that night, attempting a burglary. Raju told the CBI he saw two priests at the scene, one disposing of evidence in the well. His statement, though controversial due to his criminal background, gave investigators a thread to pull. Why would priests be at the convent at 4 a.m.? What were they hiding? Further evidence bolstered the CBI's case. Forensic analysis of Abhaya's injuries pointed to a deliberate blow to the head, inconsistent with a fall or suicide. The axe handle recovered from the convent matched the wound's profile. The kitchen's state, items out of place, signs of a scuffle, suggested Abhaya had interrupted something illicit. The prosecution theorized that Kotur, Sephi, and possibly Puthrikail were engaged in an improper encounter, and Abhaya's unexpected presence threatened to expose them. In a panic, they allegedly killed her to protect their reputations and the church's image. The CBI's investigation wasn't without flaws. Early mishandling by local police meant critical evidence, like fingerprints or blood traces, was lost or contaminated. The convent's nuns, bound by loyalty or fear, offered conflicting accounts, with some claiming Abhaya was depressed, while others insisted she was content. The church's influence loomed large, with allegations that senior clergy pressured witnesses to stay silent. Yet, the CBI's persistence uncovered additional clues. A torn piece of Abhaya's veil in the kitchen and water, stains suggesting a struggle near the sink. These findings, combined with Raju's testimony, painted a vivid picture of a desperate cover-up. The question of motive remained contentious. Why would respected clergy resort to murder? The prosecution argued that the fear of scandal in Kerala's conservative Catholic community drove the act. A nun witnessing an illicit encounter could ruin careers and tarnish the church's reputation. The decision to dump Abhaya's body in the well, they claimed, was a calculated move to stage a suicide, exploiting her youth and inexperience to deflect suspicion. But doubts lingered. Was the motive truly personal, or was something larger, perhaps institutional corruption, at play? As the CBI built its case, the community grappled with disbelief. Kottayam, a stronghold of Syro-Malabar Catholicism, struggled to reconcile the image of pious clergy with accusations of violence. Abhaya's family, meanwhile, faced years of anguish, their faith in both the church and the justice system tested. The investigation's slow grind, marked by hostile witnesses and lost evidence, raised a haunting question. Could the truth ever be fully uncovered in a case so entangled with power and secrecy? By 2008, the Sister Abhaya murder case, which had languished for over a decade, reached a turning point. The Central Bureau of Investigation, CBI, under relentless pressure from activist Jomon Puran and the Sister Abhaya Case Action Council, made a bold move. On November 19, 2008, they arrested Father Thomas Couture, Sister Sefi, and Father Jose Puthricail, charging them with murder, destruction of evidence, and, in Couture's case, criminal trespass. The arrests sent shockwaves through Kottayam's Catholic community, where the accused were respected figures. For Abhaya's family, it was a glimmer of hope after 16 years of frustration. But the path to justice was far from smooth. The CBI's case rested on a mix of circumstantial evidence, forensic findings, and the pivotal testimony of Adaka Raju, the thief who claimed to have seen two priests at the convent on the night of March 27, 1992. Raju's account, though compelling, was challenged by defense lawyers who painted him as an unreliable witness with a criminal past. Physical evidence included the axe handle, believed to have caused Abhaya's head injuries, and the kitchen scene's disarray. Her slipper, veil, a spilled water bottle, and an open fridge door, suggesting a struggle. Forensic experts testified that Abhaya's head wounds were inflicted before drowning, ruling out suicide. Yet the absence of direct evidence, like fingerprints or bloodstains, weakened the prosecution's case, a consequence of the initial police's mishandling. The trial, held in a CBI court in Thiruvananthapuram, was a grueling affair. Prosecutors argued that Abhaya had witnessed Couture, Sefi, and possibly Puthricail in a compromising situation in the convent kitchen around 4 EU Fahidans. RT4AEM, fearing exposure in Kerala's conservative Catholic community. They allegedly struck her with the axe handle and dumped her body in the well to stage a suicide. The defense countered that the evidence was flimsy, pointing to inconsistencies in Raju's timeline and the lack of eyewitnesses. They also alleged a conspiracy, claiming the CBI was pressured by activists to frame the clergy. Hostile witnesses, including nuns who retracted earlier statements, further complicated matters. One nun, who initially hinted at suspicious activity in the convent, later claimed coercion by investigators. A controversial element was the 2008 virginity test conducted on Sister Sefi, purportedly to investigate the motive of an illicit encounter. The test, deemed invasive and unethical, sparked outrage and was later declared unconstitutional by the Delhi High Court. In 2023, highlighting violations of Sefi's dignity, prosecutors, however, leaned heavily on circumstantial clues: the torn veil, the kitchen's state, and Couture's presence near the convent, corroborated by Raju. They painted a picture of a desperate cover-up, orchestrated to protect the church's reputation. The courtroom was a battleground of emotions. Abhaya's family, present at every hearing, faced intimidation and social ostracism for challenging the church. Jomon Puran, a constant presence, rallied supporters outside, keeping public interest alive. The defense, backed by church sympathizers, portrayed the accused as victims of a witch hunt. Couture and Sefi maintained their innocence, while Puthricail was discharged in 2018 for lack of evidence, narrowing the focus to the remaining two. On December 22, 2020, after years of delays, the CBI court delivered its verdict. Couture and Sefi were guilty of murder and destruction of evidence, with Couture also convicted of criminal trespass. They were sentenced to life imprisonment and fined Rs 5 lakh each. The judge cited the overwhelming circumstantial evidence and Raju's testimony as decisive despite gaps in the chain of proof. For Abhaya's family, the verdict was bittersweet. Justice, at last, but at a steep cost. The courtroom erupted in cheers from activists, while church supporters decried the ruling as biased. The social impact was profound. The case exposed the Catholic Church's influence in Kerala, raising questions about institutional accountability. It also highlighted systemic flaws in India's justice system, from evidence tampering to judicial delays. Kottayam's community was divided, with some hailing the verdict as a triumph over power, others mourning the tarnished image of their faith. The personal toll was stark. Abhaya's parents, aged and weary, spoke of closure but lamented the years lost to grief. Yet, the resolution was not final. In June 2022, the Kerala High Court suspended Kotur and Sefi's sentences, granting them bail pending their appeal. The court cited weak evidence and inconsistencies in the prosecution's case, reigniting debates about justice. Activists like Jomon vowed to fight on, while the accused, now free, retreated from public view. The case's outcome left a lingering question. Had the true culprits been caught? Or was the verdict a compromise in a saga too complex to unravel fully? The Sister Abhaya murder case, spanning over 3 decades, left an indelible mark on Kerala's social, religious, and judicial landscape. The conviction of Father Thomas Kotur and Sister Sefi in 2020, followed by their bail and suspended sentences in 2022, did little to quell the public's hunger for definitive justice. The case exposed deep fissures in trust between institutions, church, police, and judiciary, and the people they serve, raising questions that continue to resonate. How could a young nun's death be so casually dismissed as suicide? Why did it take 28 years for a verdict, only for it to be challenged? The long-term effects of the case are both a cautionary tale and a call for reform. For Abhaya's family, the ordeal was a marathon of grief and resilience. Her parents, aging and worn by years of fighting powerful institutions, found partial solace in the 2020 verdict, but the 2022 bail decision reopened old wounds. They spoke publicly of their loss, not just of a daughter, but of faith in the systems meant to protect her. The community in Kottayam, a Catholic stronghold, grappled with a fractured identity. Some saw the convictions as a necessary reckoning, exposing the church's fallibility. Others viewed the case as an attack on their faith, deepening divisions. Public opinion, fueled by media coverage and Jomon Puthanparakal's activism, remained polarized, with ongoing protests demanding accountability. The case's broader impact on India's justice system was profound. It laid bare systemic issues, shoddy initial investigations, evidence tampering, and the influence of powerful institutions over law enforcement. The local police's rush to label Abhaya's death a suicide, coupled with allegations of church interference, underscored the need for independent oversight in high-profile cases. The CBI's struggles with hostile witnesses and lost evidence highlighted gaps in investigative protocols. The 2008 virginity test on Sister Sefi, ruled unconstitutional in 2023, became a flashpoint for debates on gender and dignity in legal processes, prompting calls for stricter ethical guidelines. Educational takeaways from the case are stark. It serves as a case study in the dangers of institutional cover-ups and the power of grassroots activism. Jomon's relentless campaign, backed by the Sister Abhaya Case Action Council and 67 nuns, showed how public pressure can force accountability, even against formidable odds. For future prevention, reforms are needed. Stronger evidence preservation protocols, protections for whistleblowers within institutions like the church, and faster judicial processes to avoid decades-long delays. The case also underscores the importance of forensic advancements, as the 1995 homicide ruling relied on re-examined autopsy data. As the appeal process continues, the Sister Abhaya case remains a symbol of the fight for truth in the face of power. It asks society to reflect. How can justice systems balance institutional influence with impartiality? What safeguards can prevent evidence loss or witness intimidation? For Kerala and beyond, The case is a reminder that justice, though delayed, must be pursued relentlessly to honor victims, like Abhaya, and ensure no one is above the law.